Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop, Emerald Planet. All the ecology news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's your host, Executive Director of the Emerald Planet, Dr. Sam Lee Hancock.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we look around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technologies, the services, and the products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And when we look at all the 2 billion new people will be added to the planet by 2050, which means we'll have about 9 billion souls to take care of, how are we going to provide the food, the fuel, and the fiber, and of course, the housing for them to live in. And of course, the natural extension of that is the commercial space so they actually can earn a living and to enhance the quality of life on the planet. We have a gentleman sitting right beside me who's actually not only thinking and working with various levels of government about realizing this by 2050, but actually is doing a lot of work both in construction, design, and working in renewable energies. His name is Ethan Landis. He is the principal of Landis Construction Company, and also he is a member of the Washington, D.C. Mayor's Green Building Advisory Council. And Ethan, welcome to the Emerald Planet.
Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you here. And just tell us a little bit about, what is Landis Construction Company?
Great. Well, we've been in business about 25 years now, and we have a design build remodeling firm, and our strategy is to work with clients from the conception, really the dream phase, through construction, through design, through construction, and then obviously helping them maintain their house over as long as they live in it.
Well, I think that's really fantastic, and I know that looking at your background, you have a number of professional associations as well as working with the regional and local governments. Why get involved in so many activities beyond just your own organization?
Right. That's a great question. Sometimes asked that of myself, but I feel it's giving back to our city, which is a terrific city. Washington, D.C. is growing steadily, and it's investing in itself in a very smart way, but obviously the whole region, and Maryland and Virginia around here. But the people giving back to the government is a very important part of what I feel is important, and the government obviously helps our businesses do well too, because it creates a stable environment for the government. The government does for all of us to build our businesses and do the best we can for our clients.
Yeah. Well, looking at I know that you've been working both domestically and, of course, you have influence internationally because of being in Washington, D.C., the capital region of the United States. But what is some of the background as far as the use of energy, both by residential and extension commercial, as we look at the consumption as we go towards 2050 of electrical power?
Well, certainly the built environment uses the lion's share of energy. Their industrial uses and transportation, of course, are very large, but within the built environment, the residential component is pretty substantial, about 20 or 21%.
I think that's incredible to think at 21%. And of course, many people think of power plants or vehicles as being the major polluters, but actually construction and the buildings within which people live in their own homes, and then as well as the commercial space, actually as much or more as far as CO2 emissions than the vehicles and or even the power plants.
Right. So as people obviously live in their built environments between work and home, about 90% of their time is spent indoors and maybe more, and so they have to keep it warm and cool it and have hot water and all the other things that we do in our homes, charging all of our electronic devices.
Well, looking at this chart, I think this is very telling, Ethan, as far as if you look at buildings and then the residential commercial, it's just the impact that we're having on the environment by this. But as we move towards 2050, and there's dramatic changes happening to the climate, how are we going to balance this so that the buildings are not having such an impact on the environment?
Right. Well, inside of that, those percentages that are used in the commercial world as well as the residential world, the government has a very important role to play in that it develops and implements building codes. As we experience them, we don't necessarily know about them, but in the commercial side of the world, there's a bunch of building codes, and then in the residential, and as you can see on this chart, the top line shows the building codes over the last 20 or actually 40 years in the residential world, and you could see the line is going down. Buildings are required to become more and more energy efficient as they are with commercial. And that's a very important trend that we want to keep working on.
Well, looking at that trend, I know we talked about the 21% as far as the residential buildings, but as you're saying, homes are definitely becoming more energy efficient as well as commercial buildings as we move towards 2050?
Yes, the built environment by regulation is having to become more energy efficient, but obviously people play a big part in that too, because the government sort of makes you do a certain level of work, but obviously people can choose to do a better level of work too, and that's why we work with homeowners and apartment owners who want to make their residence as energy efficient as practical. And there's obviously building codes that require you to go to a certain level, but then there are a number of other options to go even more energy efficient on a number of levels within your home.
Yeah, looking at the requirements as far as government, those really are the baseline or the minimum.
Right.
And what you really want to do, and I think you're doing this with the people you're consulting, both on the residential and commercial side, is that you really want to go beyond that. And not only are they becoming more responsible to the environment and reducing the CO2, but also it's costing them less.
Right. And an interesting trend in there that maybe a lot of people aren't aware of is that the size of people's homes has been going up steadily over the last 40 years. It used to
put
be
that slide up.
Used to be as little as 1,000 or 1,400 square foot for the average home, and now it's over double that, over 2,400 square feet per home. So that's a very important trend. And then at the same time, the number of people living in each home has been going down. So that has had a big impact on how much energy we use per person, which is a very interesting way to think about it.
Yeah, and looking at this inverse relationship as I travel around the world, I've been in 84 countries now, all over the globe, and what you're seeing, no matter what continent you're on, whether it's in Asia or in Africa, Latin America, what have you, is that even though we have more and more people, the homes are just generally getting larger, the apartments, the condominiums becoming larger. So what is this thinking about how we can actually increase the space, but we're in a sense dramatically reducing the amount of energy consumption that's going on inside each of those livable envelopes?
Right. So of course the insulation that we put into our homes is getting more sophisticated, and we're putting more of it in. The quality of the windows that we put in is better. The HVAC and heating and cooling systems we put in are very important, and then hot water consumption is a big part. So all these different parts of where we use energy is very important to focus on making each of those more energy efficient. And so in this slide you can see going back to the early 90s through to 2009, the changes in energy by component within your house is obviously changing, and we want to keep an eye on those because we want to drive down the energy consumption by category in your home.
Yeah, and looking at that, I know this is very interesting, and one of the points that you and I were talking about earlier is when you look at the home, what are some of the major areas? We talked about hot water, and people normally think of lighting and heating and things like that, but there are many areas in a home that actually can be what they call energy hogs, and then also you have the vampire use within a home. So what are some of these areas, maybe some of the areas in a home or even a commercial building we don't normally think about, but actually is using a large amount of energy that maybe we could actually do without or greatly reduce?
Right. Well, one of the trends you can see in this slide is the amount of energy that's used by what they call plug load. So all of your little devices, your cell phones, your televisions, your recording devices in your house, the energy demand for those has been going up. While certain other types of energy demand have been going down due to efficiency in large part. So it's important to remember every little device you bring home and you plug in is using energy, and even if it's unplugged, you think it's unplugged, but the adapters in the wall, those will ghost a little bit of energy. So you want to make sure they're either unplugged or use them on an energy strip that you can easily turn off the plugs.
Yeah, looking at that, and that's what you call about the vampire uses in the home. How should people think about these electrical devices? We bring them in, we've got the camera, the cell phone, even now flashlights. We've got all these things, the computers, the laptops,
right.
We're charging at all times, and we don't really think about it because we think, well, we close the lid, it's off.
Yes.
But it's not really the case.
And it's good to check on these things because you can have an energy audit done at some point point and somebody can come in and show you how much energy is used, or you can buy or even rent some little tester devices that'll show you how much energy things are using, like your television when it's off or when it's on. Knowing how much energy these things use is sometimes interesting to help you and your kids know that it's better to turn them off.
Yeah, looking at this LEED, L-E-E-D, what is LEED and how is it impacting positive, negative as far as energy consumption? But more than that, Ethan, the whole thing is the most efficient house is you just put up 4 walls, a roof, no windows, no doors, and somehow you crawl in, but we don't live that way.
Right.
So how do we take LEED and use it so that actually it enhances the quality of life while reducing the cost?
Right. Well, great. This is an example of a LEED Platinum house we did in Georgetown, Washington, D.C.
Now, what is
years
LEED?
ago. Right. So leadership in energy and environmental design. So that acronym really captures a lot. But the U.S. GBC, the U.S. Green Building Council, is the organization that developed LEED and manages it and does the scoring for it. But in this particular house, so this is an example of a house that was done and built and tested under the LEED for Homes scorecard. They have scorecards for commercial properties as well. Mm-hmm. And so you asked, what makes this home different? Why is this sort of an important step forward? And I would say on a couple levels. One is that it uses dramatically less energy, and I'll show you a slide in a second that talks about that, which was a terrific documentation for us. But it also uses less water.
And this is something that's really important, particularly as the world itself is drying out. People think we're surrounded by water, but only about 1% of that for the whole planet is potable, which means we can drink it easily.
Right.
And much of it is brackish or salt water, like in the
right.
oceans. So we have to be more and more conscious of water as well as energy.
And water does use a lot of energy, too, to get to our tap. We don't see it, of course, but all the filtration plants and everything use a huge amount of energy, a notable percentage in every city. So indoor air quality is very important, and overall making the home really comfortable and very durable. That's one of the really important things, is making sure when you build a home, you don't have to have a lot of maintenance over the years and come back and replace materials over and over again. You want to use really good quality materials and build it all very, very well.
15 seconds. Where's Landis going over the next 10, 15, 20 years?
Great. Well, we are growing, but growing very slowly and steadily, very conscientiously. But we really enjoy doing more and more deep energy retrofits and taking older homes that have a lot of character, maybe even historic, and making them very energy efficient and healthy homes for people to live in.
Fantastic. This is Ethan Landis, principal of Landis Construction Company. Is also a member of the Mayor's Green Building Advisory Council in Washington, D.C. Ethan, thank you for being with us as we create the Emerald Planet.
There's more than just books at the library.
There's more than just books at the library.
Excuse me.
There's more than just books at the library.
Il n'y a plus que de livres à la bibliothèque.
Hello. You have a lot of great books here today. You know there's more than just books at the library.
I know.
There's more than just books at the library.
I don't want to be hooked to a machine.
I want all the medical treatment available to me.
I wouldn't want my family to have to make this decision.
My doctor knows what's best for me.
An advance directive is your life on your terms. Talk with your family. Decide what's right for you. Then put it in writing.
Documenting my wishes today means my family won't have to make heart-wrenching decisions later.
To learn more, visit www.putitinwriting.org.
1,200 American youth run away from their homes every day. The National Runaway Switchboard is here to help. 1-800-RUNAWAY. If you are a runaway, thinking about running away from home, or a parent or guardian concerned about issues facing your child, call us 24 hours a day. 1-800-RUNAWAY. In times of crisis, hope is just a phone call away. 1-800
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we're looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technologies, the products and the services, as well as the people that are making a difference as we move towards 2050. Because we're going to be in a planet that will have about 9 billion people, yes, about 9 billion souls on the planet, and how we're going to be able to take care of them so they're not just by subsistence and just exist, but also to have an increasing level of quality of life. And even though many people say we're already beyond 7 billion and it's too many people on the planet, at the same time we're producing, it's estimated by scientists and others, maybe enough food for 14 billion people already, even though we're wasting almost half of that. So looking at construction, because we're going to have to provide housing and to be able to take care of the shelter needs of all these people. At the same time, how we're going to be able to provide the space while reducing the cost of that space, both for construction as well as for the energy that it takes to do that. We have a gentleman who's actively working at that. He's Ethan Landis, who is the principal of Landis Construction Company and a member of the Washington, D.C. Mayor's Green Building Advisory Council. And Ethan, you're a very busy guy.
Well, there's lots to do.
And I know you're on many more committees, both from a professional point of view as well as working with the city government. So tell us a little bit about this very progressive company you have, this Landis Construction Company.
Well, thank you. We've been around for 25 years now, and my brother and I started the company together. He is an architect, and I have a strong acumen for construction and the business side of things. So together we have built a true design build remodeling company where we go into people's homes, primarily single family residences in the greater DC area, and we help people do beautiful remodels. But of course, and a very important part of almost all those remodels is making them more energy efficient.
Yeah, and I know the building, because I came over and visited a couple of months ago and attended a couple of your seminars, and I was very impressed that you're talking about the remodeling, but you're in a very brand new building, and also it's very energy efficient, and at the same time you're producing most of your own electricity through solar. But before we really get into that, we're going to talk about some of these things, but I know that you're on a number of these committees, both in the region and within the city government itself, as well as professional associations. Tell us about 2 or 3 of those, and why is that really important that people like you, very busy, have your own business, but yet you're giving your time, because people aren't paying you to be on these advisory councils and committees. Why do all of that work?
Yeah, no, I personally just get a great deal of satisfaction out of knowing I'm giving back to the great society that's helped me and my company in so many ways, indirectly and directly. But the first one, the Mayor's Green Building Advisory Council, has been around for about 6 years now, and it is helping the city take legislation that has passed over the years and make sure it gets implemented properly and report back to the mayor and the city council about how that legislation is actually being implemented. Mm-hmm. And it's very focused on making Washington, D.C. one of the greenest cities in the world by having more buildings that are LEED certified.
And I know if the mayor was sitting here, he said we want to be the most green city in the United States at least, and the world, because actually he was just speaking recently in my Rotary Club, and he actually had those very words.
As well he should.
He is emphatic that Washington, D.C. is going to be a very green city. Yes. But I know you're on several other committees too, and I think this is important as far as the story we're going to talk about on energy efficiency and protecting the environment. So what are these others?
The other committee that I've spent a lot of time on is the Construction Code Coordinating Board, CCCB, which is located in the district, and municipalities all over the country have these. But what they do is they take the international codes that are developed in the country and they adopt them within your city. And so we have worked, and actually just on Friday, the mayor announced that all the new 2012 codes for all parts of construction, commercial and residential, have been passed. And we worked very hard to go through those codes and adopt them and craft them to what the city wants to do. But the most important parts are the energy code and a brand new code that's just been developed, the International Green Construction Code. And we are very, very proud of being able to adopt these codes very early on in the cycle.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Looking at what's behind us here, we are looking at something that looks like something from outer space, but I know this is really something that you use literally on a day-to-day basis as far as all the construction work you're doing. So tell us a little bit about what are we looking at?
Right. So when we come into someone's home, sometimes they want to do a lot of remodeling, and it's easy. We know we're going to get into all the walls and be able to insulate and change windows and do various things. And other people want to do very little remodeling, or they just want to do what we call an energy retrofit. And this product right here is a blower door tester. And so we put it in the door, we close up the rest of the house, and we negatively pressure the house so we can detect where all the holes and gaps and cracks are in your home. And then we can figure out a good plan for how to make your house a lot more energy efficient, a lot tighter, which also tends to make it more comfortable.
Yeah, and also too, that's very, very important. Now we go from the blower door, we put this back in here purposely so people can kind of see the first step in this process. And then what are some of the other things that you go through to make sure that you have what's called a very tight envelope? Mm-hmm. And why a tight envelope? Because many people have this misconception that the house has to breathe.
Right.
People breathe, but houses, need to have air exchanges. So how do we do that process?
Yes. Well, really, this all comes down to building science, in that your house is, to some extent, a living space. There's moisture in it, and there's air temperature, and there's air exchanges, and building professionals that really understand and appreciate the science that's important behind all this, they want to make sure your house is as tight as it needs to be, not too tight, but as tight as it needs to be, so that we can control the environment inside and thereby reduce the amount of energy that needs to be used to heat and cool it optimally. And the blower door test is important for helping with this, to be able to monitor and control as much as is practical. Because obviously you can spend too much tightening up your house, and it can get very expensive. But we want to do what's the sort of the most practical level.
Yeah, the optimum. And looking at this, I know there's an emphasis in this as far as the roof, the rafter areas, and the roof of these houses. And why such a focus on the roof? What's going on in that part of the envelope that's critically important?
Right. Well, as you can see from these pictures, two of them are showing houses that are being remodeled, and we can really get to everything. But two of the pictures also show the parts of the house that often are accessible, the basement or a crawl space, and then in an attic, where the tradition is that people have insulation in the ceiling of the top living floor, but the attic is what we call unconditioned. Mm-hmm. And the Department of Energy has determined, along with a number of other building scientists, that transforming these spaces into what we call conditioned space, a conditioned basement or conditioned attic versus vented attics, is about 18% more energy efficient than having a vented space. And so you can see here spray foam is being applied to the side walls and closing up these spaces so that if you put some conditioning in them, you end up making the whole house a lot more comfortable and more energy efficient.
Yeah, and also too, it's very minimal what you're having to add as far as that. Let's just kind of walk through this. Just tell us about some of the technologies, because this portion of the program is really about technologies. Mm-hmm. And how it's an investment, it's not a cost. And at the same time, it's really helping the environment.
Right.
Well, just walk us through this.
Sure. One of the larger energy consumption portions of every home is heating up water, which is about 10 or 12% of each home is used on just heating water. And so you can heat it with gas, or you can heat it with electricity. And in one of these slides, there's a solar panels that we put on a house where a good portion of the water is heated by the sun. So you want to make sure you pick a water heating system that really works well with your house. Maybe you don't have a lot of space, maybe you have lots of room, maybe you have good roof space, and so you want to work with a good contractor to make sure you use the water heating system that makes the most sense for you. This one is a system that is a component of a another heating system, a geothermal system. So we take waste heat and we use it, instead of discarding it, we actually heat the water with it.
Yeah, and also too, you're using the natural temperature. It's in the soil within the earth itself, and so that's a way to moderate, because the earth is roughly 60 plus or minus degrees, and so we want to use that as much as possible.
Right.
And then you're only heating and cooling a certain part of that. Now, what kind of system do you call this besides geothermal? What is actually the dynamic that's going on here, earth to the mechanicals?
Right. So a geothermal system is basically using the earth as a battery, and it's putting energy back in the earth, and then it's pulling energy out of the earth for the heating and cooling cycles. And in this system, what's called a desuperheater is the water heating system as a component of that. And it's a very elegant and relatively simple technology that is terrific, particularly in environments where it's very, very hot or it's very, very cold.
Mm-hmm. And both ways. Looking at the water heaters and being able to insulate those, this is something that most people never even think about, and it's one of the low-hanging fruit as far as being able to cut the energy cost of your home.
Right. So these are a traditional tanked hot water system that's used gas, and then there's another one that uses electric, and then a third one that's a heat pump that uses some slightly different technology. And each of those are good, but you just want to know where to use them. They're appropriate in different houses for different situations.
Right, and we're looking at different systems here as well.
Right, and this is what's called a indirect fired hot water heater. So the tank on the left is just a hot water tank that's super insulated, and it is heated off of the main boiler in this house, which is generally about 10% more energy efficient than having a separate heater.
Now we're talking about houses here, but actually within commercial space, you can do similar kinds of things. It'll be all to scale, of course, depending on the square footage within that, the roof structure and the insulation and all that. Right. But aren't these very similar systems that can be used? It's just scale is the difference?
Yes, that's a very good point. There's a very, very similar technology in a lot of these.
What are we looking at here?
Right, so then the other factor is heating and cooling your house, and a lot of houses, particularly in Washington, D.C., older houses have boiler systems that heat hot water that goes through your radiators, and making sure that you have a very energy efficient boiler is very important. If you've got to change your boiler, you're going to need to change it soon, make sure you put in a very energy efficient system.
Yeah, and the SEER value and all that just continues to increase, and we're just about out of time, but Landis Construction Company, where are you going to be in the next, say, 10, 20, 30 years as we move towards 2050?
Right. Well, we certainly want to steadily grow, but as we grow, we want to make sure that more and more of all of our projects are focused on sustainable best practices, green technology, and making sure people are using less and less energy, and yet remaining very comfortable in their home.
Yeah, and I think really about this whole thing, Ethan, is that we're actually increasing the comfort level by reducing the costs. Isn't that really the goal, the objective of all that?
Yes, the operating costs are very important to lower during the course of the life of the house. That's a very important thing to think about when you're making those initial investments.
And thank you for being with us as we look around the globe as we create the Emerald Planet.
Osama bin Laden calls getting nuclear weapons a religious duty.
Today, materials that can be used to make nuclear weapons are stored in more than 40 countries.
Sometimes protected by just a chain link fence.
Yet not enough is being done to lock down these materials
before terrorists steal them.
Why did we learn all this?
My mother.
My son.
My sister-in-law.
Were all murdered September 11th.
Help protect America.
Together we can.
Please join us.
The stem cell issue is being debated throughout the country. Truth is, most everyone has an opinion, even if they don't know the facts.
Let's stop arguing and start really understanding the potential of stem cell research.
For us and for millions of Americans living with disabilities, get the facts.
Call 1-877-842-3442 for free information from the Stem Cell Research Foundation. That's 1-877-842-3442.
Following the tragic events of September 11th, there have been hundreds of violent attacks against innocent Americans.
Remember what that flag you're waving stands for.
Remember, please stop the hate.
We're stronger when we are united.
Remember what that flag you're waving stands for.
One nation, under God.
Indivisible.
With liberty.
And justice.
For all.
In America, there's either room for everyone, or it's not America.
Don't pick the wrong fight.
Let's keep America land of the free.
stop the hate.
Planning a home renovation? Put this at the top of your to-do list. Because after 10 years, none of you are protected against tetanus and another potentially fatal disease, diphtheria. A minor injury, such as a cut or a scrape, can put you at risk for a tetanus infection. And while safety gear offers some protection, an up-to-date vaccination called the TD booster is the best insurance against tetanus. So get the TD booster. If it's been 10, do it again.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we look in 144 different nations looking for what we call the best of the best practices, the technologies, services, products, and the people who are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And things are constantly changing and improving. The technologies are evolving all the time. And the whole thing is to be able to accommodate more and more people as we go from a little over 7 billion to about 9 billion people on the planet by 2050. And at the same time, we want to make sure that we provide the food, the fuel, the fiber, and the food and the structures they're going to live in to make sure that there's even a better quality of life than what they would even have today. And we're adding more people in Asia and Latin America, Africa, all the different continents that have a large population growth. And so how are we going to include them in what's going on? And I have a gentleman who is actually working on looking at renewable energy. His name is Ken Stadlin, who is the president of what's called KENERGY Solar. I love that name, Ken. And welcome to the Emerald Planet.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Sam.
I'm glad to have you out. And we have some of your work actually on the large TV screen right behind us. But tell us a little bit about KENERGY Solar, and also how did you come up with the name?
Well, we started 5 years ago. We started KENERGY to try to provide solar energy solutions in the Maryland, D.C., Virginia market, this region here. And you know, when we came up with the name, it was a project that we started with my brother and I. We realized that it did kind of make people smile, and after we got past the fear of that, we thought it was actually a good thing to make people laugh, and they get it. You know, they know that I'm Ken and this is KENERGY, but you know, it also works outside of that.
Well, I think it's a very clever name, but why solar energy? I mean, there's all these renewables, you know, and of course there's the debate between whether we're going to have nuclear, hydrogen, coal, you know, natural gas, all these things, and yet you've really gone down the path of solar energy. Of course, you've looked at other renewables, but why solar specifically, and why is this one of the things that's really taking off globally?
Well, we were able to look at the market, and you could see when we started, this was 2009, but we were able to see in California how the market was really taking off, and so we placed a bet on the market on the East Coast, following behind California by a couple of years, and you know, we've been right in that regard. People naturally understand that, you know, the sun comes up, I'm making power, and I'm not putting out any pollution. That works every day, even on cloudy days, and you know, it's going to keep on working. So, you know, it's very fortunate to be in the solar industry, we feel like, because all the trends are in our favor, the costs are coming down, and the people really want it, and our role and our job is really to help more people get solar energy, and so that's really the way that we look at it, is trying to help people to get to the finish line, get those solar systems installed on their properties and so forth.
Well, I think this is one of the things that I really like about Washington, D.C., where there's really emphasis, but it's not just, you know, the ones that are the very rich or the top of the economic pyramid, but yet they want to include every level of society in this. So there's special programs that are targeted, you know, for low income, middle, and higher income individuals. So when people are looking at the possibility, regardless of of the socioeconomic background or where they live in the city or in other countries around the globe. What are some of the things that you want to look at? And also, we have this example here of the Landis construction company, and it's a building that's put on having its own solar energy on a commercial project. And we kind of think of residential, but actually more and more commercial buildings are putting in solar energy for their particular project itself.
Yes, so there are a number of different applications in different market segments. You mentioned low income, and there's a lot of emphasis on trying, for example, to deploy solar energy where we can make a bigger difference in saving money on the electric bill for lower income people, and that makes a bigger difference in their life. That's a bigger portion of the money that they spend in their day-to-day life. But as you mentioned also, we work with a lot of different commercial buildings and commercial property owners to put solar energy systems up on their building and work with them to devise the different financial techniques that are needed, to be able to help them get a solar energy system up on their building. Landis Construction, they are our landlord actually. We are located in the Landis building, and as you know, Ethan Landis and Chris Landis are two leaders in the Washington, D.C. area in Green Building, and they've been very supportive of the efforts that we're making at KENERGY to move forward, and they're very progressive. But at the end of the day, they're just like every other business owner, and as much as they want to put solar on their building, they wouldn't do it until it makes financial sense for them. So, that's the conditions that have really spurred the market, is the financial returns to people, because everybody will look at it, everybody wants it, but they'll really pull the trigger and make it happen when they can see a return on their investment. Well,
looking at this slide, we just came from this roof system, and this is really very elegant because this is on a very attractive modern building. But at the same time, just the solar array itself is quite attractive, and you can't see it, from the parking lot or from the roadway. So it's really up there. It's just working away, doing its thing. But looking at the dollar savings versus the investment, what is the ROI on a system like what we were just looking at?
Well, Washington, D.C., where the Landis building is located, is one of the top markets in the country. It's got fantastic financial returns for a solar energy system, can be as high as 20% or more. And
that's tough if you're putting your money in the bank or you're putting it in CDs or something like that. So that's a real return on investment.
Right, and it is real, and that's what motivates people. Like I said, lots of people want to do it, but when you're going to write a check and it's going to have a lot of zeros on it, it's really happens when there is a financial return, just like any other type of energy industry out there. And the conditions have been strong. Pricing for solar equipment and for installation of solar has come down 60 to 70% in the last 5 years.
That is just incredible, the drop in price, and even in some markets it may have been only 20% of what it was about 5 years ago. But looking at this 20 years of solar savings, what is this really telling us?
Well, so you pay for your fuel, your electricity costs up front, and you're really...
So you're front loading the cost as far as is concerned.
Your solar modules, your inverters, all of the equipments that make up the system, have a relatively high capital cost up front, and then over time you save money through tax credits, for corporations they have other depreciation benefits that are significant, and then you have the electricity savings, and then you have renewable energy certificates, which are environmental attributes that go along with the electricity generation, and these have been devised as a market mechanism to help finance solar energy systems.
Well, looking at this is one of the things that you and I have been kind of chuckling about, as far as many people think you're going to take a big can opener and open up the top of their building, and they're going to do all kinds of things. But it's very simple, in many ways it really goes to protect the building, and I think there's other environmental attributes, as far as solar panels on the building that go beyond just the energy savings and the cost savings.
So yes, there are a number of like I said, the renewable energy certificates are a significant market enhancement for solar energy. So those are worth the same amount as the electricity, or in Maryland, for example, and up to 3 times the price of the electricity in Washington, D.C. So they provide a significant financial incentive to place solar on a building.
Yeah, but looking at this also too, you're reducing the heat buildup in the summer. You're actually providing a little more heat protection as far as the building is concerned during the wintertime. Talk about some of those attributes that go beyond, again, just the financial aspects of it.
Well, so we are placing the system almost always when we're talking about buildings, we're putting them on the roof. So, you know, the system itself is protecting the roof, and we place a lot of emphasis in the design and installation phase, and in you know, working with the building systems, protecting the roof structure and the roofing membrane, and then once the system's up there, it's essentially covering the majority of the roof, and it's keeping the sunlight and the ultraviolet radiation and other factors from really damaging or, you know, causing wear and tear on the roof. So it can enhance the life of the roofs where it is installed. The other thing is that we would typically provide on a flat roof, we wouldn't make any penetrations in the roof. We would place a protective layer of what we call sacrificial roofing, and then install right on top of that so that there's zero damage to the roofing membrane.
Now, talk about what is going on here. We see this, it's very passive, it's just sitting there, the sun comes up, you know, the solar start collecting. I know you have other, you know, inverters and other types of technologies that go involved in that. So this is very benign then as far as the structure itself and all the humans that are around it. Is that correct?
Well, that is the beauty of a solar energy system. There are no moving parts, and so you know, the sun comes up, and sooner than you think, because the reflected sunlight comes down and turns the system on, and it starts to produce the required voltage, and it'll start to produce electricity. And that's all. It's just sitting there. Like I said, the wires are connected, but there's just electrons flowing. There's nothing else that's moving or nothing that really requires service other than regular scheduled maintenance. So, you know, there is a very low cost of operations, and don't forget, for creating energy, there's zero fuel cost involved. So,
yeah, and this is the whole thing too, as far as you're reducing the transport of natural gas or coal or whatever kind of fossil fuels that are going to be used in the buildings, and also too, this is really an increase as far as green jobs within the local community. But we're just about running out of time, Ken, and thank you for being with us. But in about 30 seconds, where is your the KENERGY going over the next 5, 10, 15 years?
Well, people are switched on. You know, there's no question people want to.
No pun intended, of course.
No, I mean they really are environmentally becoming more conscious. I mean they get it. They want to have solar energy. The economics are working. Even the utilities are recognizing that our market is really taking off, and so we're excited about the opportunities to put solar in more beneficial applications, and to you know, keep growing the business and jobs in the country.
Oh, I think it's absolutely fantastic, and thank you for being with us. This is Ken Stadlin, who is the president of KENERGY Solar, and he's talking about the benefits of solar as we look around the globe to create the Emerald Planet.
This is firstgov.gov, where we're obsessed with getting you government information.
Brand new student loan applications on the site, baby. This calls for a celebration. Where's your uncle?
So in the end, it was either take the astronaut gig or come work here. What can I say? Duty called.
Dude, that's my cop.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm pretty sure that's Sam's cop.
Oh, sorry?
Yeah. No. Sam's. No.
Just log on or email us and get what you need.
C, change of address form. That's how it's done.
D, driver's license renewal.
E, emailing Social Security information.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Nice, we'll allow it. All right, Ed.
What are those? Government surplus cars for auction.
You posted those online last time.
No, you did.
I'm posting them online this time!
For all your government information, firstgov.gov.
Oh.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you from Washington, D.C. in the United States. I'm Dr. Sam Hancock, the President and Executive Director of Emerald Planet International Foundation, and also the Director and host for the Emerald Planet TV. We come to you on a weekly basis to talk about what we consider the best practices in 144 different nations, those technologies, the services, and the products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. Because by 2050, it's estimated we'll have about 9 billion people on the planet, and then by the end of the century, it could be as many as 12 to 13 billion people. And so even though supposedly we're providing enough food now for that number of people, at the same time we have to think about how we're going to be able to house and provide the commercial, the retail space that allow them to have the jobs. Because as we move towards 2050, we're actually urbanizing the entire planet. And so we're going to go from about 55% of the people on the planet in urban areas to 80 or more percent. And yet at the same time, we have the country of Brazil, which is one of the BRICS nations, advancing technology and economies, and they're already at 87% in urban areas in a country as open as Brazil and almost 80% in the United States. So the world is changing very dramatically. And I have a gentleman sitting beside me who is not only has his own organization called KENERGY Solar. His name's Ken Stadlin, he's the president, but also he's very involved as far as the community is concerned and working with both local and state governments. And so, Ken, welcome to the Emerald Planet.
Thank you for having me. And yeah, we do a lot work with KENERGY Solar. We volunteer in our time and trying to create smart policies that can help build out or increase the deployment of solar energy, build solid market conditions. And what we focus on is trying to make sure that like I said, that we get it right, that we create economic conditions that will foster growth, that they're not overly generous because that creates boom and bust. So we've built a record with this Maryland, DC, Virginia Solar Energy Association of trying to get it right and do the right thing for a couple years down the road, and that's not easy. And there's always the opportunity for missteps and unintended consequences. So we've been working very hard to make sure that Maryland, DC, and Virginia can continue to promote the growth of solar energy.
Well, how you're doing that, Ken, though, and this is something we really want to bring out, is through collaboration that you're working with the local governments. And of course, both of us are advisors as far as the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, which is really a very critical way to bring together all the stakeholders within a community, and it goes across 3 states and 22 local jurisdictions, which is even more important. But at the same time, it allows the private sector, the public, the nonprofits like our own Emerald Planet and Emerald Planet TV to be involved in this process, and then also bringing the citizens into this. So looking at the work, just like this structure we're looking at here, how do you involve the business community, local citizens, so that they are actually contributing to the best way to evolve and construct these buildings so they're very energy efficient, but also we're lowering the cost?
Well, the solar industry has been focused on making sure that the economic environment is supportive for people to deploy capital. So they want to see a profit when they invest in a solar energy system. And so that's really the balance, is making sure they have market conditions that people who naturally, they all want to, take the power from the sun, but they want to be able to spend their money wisely, do something green, but they want to do it because it makes financial sense too. I mean, that's when we really see momentum. So that's the conditions that we are trying to maintain and stimulate, and that's the success that we're having. And we're seeing a lot more of that. So each time a system is deployed, a solar energy system, it's a significant amount of dollars that's going out there that's contributing to the economy, to jobs, and it's coming from the private sector, coming from investors and from property owners who want to do the right thing, but they also want to make an investment that's wise and it's going to make them money in the long run.
Well, looking at them, we're going to go through this because I really want to walk through putting in one of these in a commercial basis, because we understand there are many of the systems that have been going on residential. But if you look at the space like this is Landis Construction Company, and I know they've been collaborating with you over the years to do something like this. But at the same time, we have all this, millions of square foot, say in Washington, D.C., but all over the globe. And, in a sense, it's protecting the building, but in a sense, it's also being wasted. So what you've done is you've taken a rooftop, just as we see right here, and this is something actually now it becomes a productive part of the building. Instead of it's a cost center, it's actually now becoming a contributor to the bottom line of an organization, and not only from the financial, but also from comfort, the longevity of the building, and all that. Tell us about just the essence of this space, and then we're going to start walking through the system.
So if you look at the picture there, that's the naked roof, if you will. That's what we might see if we go out and do a site assessment. And obviously there's no solar energy up there, but what we're looking for is a roof that is open, has good exposure to the southern sky where the sun will be, and that we can fit a decent amount of solar modules so that we can create a substantial amount of electricity generation. So commercial buildings are generally dense and they consume a good amount of electricity. And we're looking for a nice new roof that isn't damaged and that's ready to last. The system itself is going to last 20, 25 years. The roof has to be in a condition that it can last that long as well.
Well, looking at this area, it's an open area, so it's almost ideal. You have the green canopy around the perimeter of this, but it doesn't shade the rooftop. But if I'm looking at this and I'm the building owner and I say, wow, this is really nice, I like having this here, and then all of a sudden we're saying, well, gee, do I want to put holes in this thing? Am I going to be doing any damage to my roof? And your answer is, Ken?
We're not putting holes in. For the flat roof, the commercial buildings that we have in the urban areas, they're generally going to be a ballasted system where there's zero penetrations in the roof. And so we're going to do a structural analysis to make sure the roof can handle the additional load, which is not very much. It's about 3 to 5 pounds per square foot. And then we're going to put a sacrificial layer down underneath the solar array, and then we will ballast it or put paving blocks basically down to hold it down in place and to withstand any wind loading that might come across that system as it's on the roof.
Yeah, this is very interesting what you're doing as far as this sacrificial roof that you're talking about. And now you've designed the system. Tell us a little bit about the design and what do you have to go through as far as architectural and engineering reviews, building permits, any kind of documentation to the local governments. Quickly, what goes into that, and then what may be some of the costs of gearing up to get to the point where you're actually starting to install the solar array?
Well, there is a significant amount of work that goes into our end of the construction of the system and designing it. But from the customer's perspective, the important thing is that it's seamless and transparent. So the first thing we'll do is to figure out what size system we'll be able to fit up on that roof, and for the most part we need real estate. We need to be able to put as much out there as we can to offset the maximum amount of electricity. But once we decide that, then we work with structural and professional engineers to make sure, like I said, that the building structure is adequate, and then we get the system permitted with the local authorities. They inspect to make sure that it's up to the relevant business codes. And all of that is handled seamlessly by KENERGY Solar, by our professional people, and that's all going on behind the scenes to make sure that this is a safe design and that it's within the local building codes and so forth.
Now, one of the things that I really like that you're doing, and we've worked with a number of professional development organizations and looking for people within local communities that don't have to travel long distances or maybe even be able to walk over to where the projects are or use local transportation. Tell us about some of the training that goes into a gentleman that's sitting right here, it's working with you to put the solar array on the roof. What kind of background do they have to have, and what are they learning that actually allows them to enhance their professional career as they move through life?
Well, so primarily the industry standards that we have to adhere to are well documented within the construction industry. So that would be the fundamental job description of what we're doing. And beyond that, every single one of these is a very difficult job for the installer. It's a lot of work. They're carrying these materials around. They're, moving bricks around or pavers to, ballast these systems. This particular one was pretty high up, and I think if you show the next slide, that's a beautiful canopy that we built outside at the Landis building, and that was conceived together with their architects. And so the thing is, though, is that the market itself is growing. The opportunities for them to build a lot of solar arrays and all throughout the area are growing. And so we have a need for well-trained construction and engineering employees that can help us to deliver high-quality systems to our customers.
Looking at the installers, though, what do they need to learn, and how much time is that involved, and then hands-on, how much are they getting? So again, they have transferable skills. They can work with you. They can do other things as far as construction and or maybe even the electrical industry.
Yes, so there's definitely a pathway to electrical achievement of master electrician, journeyman electrician, things of that sort. So the trades are involved, and for solar thermal or water heating, the plumbing trade is also involved. For our purposes, we provide OSHA training, so for safety, of course, being the number one thing that's important in any construction business. And then the specific training on installation and the techniques to build it right the first time and to be able to construct it relatively quickly, because we have to be able to put up a fair volume of solar in any given day.
Well, that I understand, but we're going to go out on this photograph. I think this is absolutely fantastic because it's very elegant, it's very attractive, and so we have about 30 seconds. One is, where are we going in the future, and how can this be incorporated in virtually any commercial and residential building?
Well, the beautiful thing about this trellis and this awning that we converted,
15 seconds left,
converted to a solar array is that we use these glass modules that are building integrated. So when we take the time to think about what a building can be, to conceive it at the time that we're designing it, we can do more to make it more efficient, to orient it properly so solar can be put on it inexpensively, and we can just get more solar out there and more efficient energy production.
Well, we have Ken Stadlin, who's president of KENERGY Solar, being with us. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for being part of the Emerald Planet. And thank you for watching us as we look around the globe to find the best of the best as we create the Emerald Planet.